Hi, I'm Kara Thorsen from Yoga Equanimity, and this is our new platform to talk about Meet the Resistance and people's stories. So for me, stories are at the heart of every culture and every individual. Today I am with Sebastien Zappa, and he's going to talk to us today about the Wim Hof method. So if you haven't heard, why don't you tell us about the Wim Hof method first, and then we'll carry on.
Okay, so the Wim Hof method was created by a Dutch guy named Wim Hof, as the name suggests.
Mm-hmm.
So he's known as a super athlete because he's been 30 years that he's been doing some crazy stuff involving cold.
Cold
temperature.
Cold sports.
So he broke. I mean, at some point he broke 26 world records from the longest immersion in an ice bath, where he stayed 1 hour 54. So that record was broken twice since then, but at some point he was.
Did hypothermia set in?
No, he was good. He was
good.
feeling okay apparently. He ran a marathon in the Arctic Circle, just wearing shorts. So barefoot, just shorts, and he ran that marathon there.
So he developed a method.
Yeah. So in fact, it's basically, it's in the first part of his life, he was developing that approach and kind of using himself as a guinea pig, testing some breathing techniques and cold exposure.
Mm-hmm.
He broke all those records, and he could see some benefits on himself.
Mm-hmm.
But at some point, I heard him saying that he was kind of like an animal circus, breaking those records. It was a good way to attract attention from the audience, from the media, and from scientists as well, who started to get interested, how can this guy stands such extreme cold condition, where we thought that basically he pushed the non-human limits, the known limits of human physiology. And after spending all those years, and with a lot of people making fun of him, that's crazy,
the Confederacy of Dunces theory.
Crazy Dutch guy doing stuff. He's funny, but he's kind of crazy,
Yeah.
And so, but then he said, okay, what I can do, anyone can do. And that's when he switched from really testing stuff on himself to more teaching a more formal procedure that is easy and that anyone, basically almost anyone can do.
And what was his background? Was this a goal of his, or just he
had
to test things, or?
No, just to make it kind of short, because that's it's. And I don't know all the details of his personal life, but basically, he was a simple man in the Netherlands, and if I remember correctly, he was a painter, in buildings, and he had kind of his family was kind of rock and roll, I know his wife was very heavily depressive. They had 4 kids at that time.
Okay.
And at some point, and she had some mental issues, and she committed suicide.
Oof.
And he got I don't remember exactly how old he was when that happened, but basically he was just left alone with 4 young kids, and saying, okay, what do I do now?
Take a cold bath. Okay.
Yeah, and that's what really triggered what followed.
Okay.
So he was not really in the process, from the early of his life, in the process of trying to break records just for the fun of it.
Right.
At some point, he had to say, okay, now I can either basically do the same as my wife,
or I can take another
I can
road.
just go forward and raise my kids.
And that's what he chose.
Yeah.
So then, when did you find the Wim Hof method?
So the very first time I think I heard of it was somewhere around like 2015.
Mm-hmm.
A friend. So I'm a scientist. I work at the university in Montreal. I'm a microbiologist, and so it was back when I was working in the US. I was working in Indiana University.
Okay.
And a colleague of mine, who is also a friend, is a chemistry professor, and he went to a conference. And you know, like sometimes in some science conference, so there is always like the very, you know, formal and serious talks. But sometimes you have like a session with some kind of different kind of stuff, you know, stuff that are like, okay, like not the regular kind of science that you hear at conference, but okay, let's.
But still, it's got some
like
clarity
and
to
there
it.
was
Yeah.
like there was like he told me about like this talk at that conference about the Iceman, like this Dutch guy who can like withstand like very like extremely cold temperature. And that friend of mine, he was my mountaineering partner. So we were, the two of us were kind of interested in this kind of how to deal with cold.
Sure.
For mountaineering, you know.
Yep.
And so that's basically the very first time I heard about him.
Yeah.
And that's it. And then it took me like
Napoleon could have used that when he tried to get into Russia, huh?
yeah, probably. Yeah.
Maybe a different story today if that had happened, but okay.
Yeah. But then, you know, I didn't hear about Wim Hof again after. I mean, it took several years after that to hear again about it, and it really crossed my path, like for good, I would say, when I think I stumbled on that documentary on YouTube. It's from the Vice channel.
Okay.
It's nowadays people there are other resources about Wim Hof, but a few years ago, like the Vice documentary was a very typical, you know, like a resource that people would find. And it's a lot about health, like how good is it for your health and stuff like that. And at that time, I was suffering from. I was not exactly sure yet, but it was like some kind of chronic fatigue with depression and stuff like that, chronic pain, and that was. Down the road, it was diagnosed to be Lyme disease.
Okay.
I had tried like so many different kind of treatment that were not working, or you know, just a little bit, you know, but
right,
you know,
but nothing that sustained.
Yeah, exactly.
And was depression something that you had struggled with before, or did it come with the Lyme, or was there a definitive difference between the two, or?
Yeah, I had suffered from depression before, but it became way worse with Lyme, because when you got the chronic fatigue, and also so you know you're always
perpetuates everything.
Tired, you know, it doesn't make your mood, you know,
frustrated,
and also when you are basically going from doctors to doctors and people just tell you,
can't be fun.
Well, you know, we don't know what's going on, just take antidepressant and you'll feel better, which was sort of true, you know, it was helping, but I wanted to find what's going
the real
on
problem?
for real. And then that's how I ended finding the Wim Hof method, and I really got significantly better after that. It made I tried many things before that. I mean, from the like regular medicine to alternative stuff, some stuff that were quite like esoteric. And you know, sometimes I was finding some relief, sometimes not.
Right. Nothing measurable.
But you know, at the end of the day, it appeared that I spent like thousands of dollars, maybe tens of thousands of dollars in anything. You know, you can, you know, like.
And this is a common problem for people who suffer from depression. That cannot, as we call it here at Yoga Equanimity, meet the resistance, but keep running from it, and they want this person to solve it or that person to solve it. But you know, in the end, we are responsible for our own health and our own psychological well-being, and so we have to put on our seatbelts and buckle in there for the hard ride. So that's what Wim Hof brought you.
I could feel the improvement really fast. And since then, I've been on a path of improvement. You know, with ups and downs. You know, I'm not. I'm really not saying that the Wim Hof method is a miracle pill at all. It's it's not like that. You know, it's a practice. You have to do it. It's part of the commitment. It's part of the Wim Hof method itself. You know, you have to practice. It's not going to fall on you like some kind of divine or magical stuff.
I can say that when he came here and did his first class here, he and his partner Sebastien, it was an extraordinary experience to be involved with, because the whole time they're building you to put you in this tub of which is ice water, which you are not going to want to be in. But they bring you in such a manner that you already know it's going to be uncomfortable, so just have the experience and see. And it was brilliant. It was really brilliant. I never would have stayed in that water if it weren't for them. But I was curious about one thing, because when you were teaching it, you were talking about the breath work that we do specifically before we go in.
Yeah.
And the one thing that captured my attention, and it was in French, so I just want to make sure I'm clear on it, is that a lot of the breath work you do was to rebalance, to have the CO2 be less in the body. Is that it? Because so this is how I understood it, and we'll have him clarify. Say we're holding our breath out of stress or diving into water or what have you. We're holding our breath. It is not the impulse to take a new breath that forces us to exhale. It's to get rid of the toxic CO2 that's in our body. Did I understand that correctly? That blew my mind. I was like, wow, everything's going to change from there.
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty much it. But still, I would just give a little correction. It's just that I don't like so much the idea of the toxic CO2. CO2 is not toxic. It's another. It's a messenger. You know, it gives you. I mean, when you have too much CO2, it gives you the message. You know, to breathe.
Get it out.
So it's not like we tend to see the CO2 as a waste from respiration, which it sort of is, but it's also like dioxygen. It's converted into CO2, but the CO2 balance in your body is also like giving a lot of messages to your body.
But I loved that explanation, because it was like, wow, that makes so much sense. We're always looking for that inhalation, and we think that inhalation is the cure, but actually that exhalation is part of the prompting. And it was kind of like working with a negative space for me. You know, we're always looking at it this way versus seeing it.
No, it's true that for most people, they think that, you know, if you hold your breath, what triggers the inhale is a lack of oxygen, but it's actually like the excess of CO2 that is a trigger.
And who knew? And it changed everything. It changed a lot of perception for kind of in everything, in every way that can flip a switch. You know, in any way you look at things after that, it's like, okay, check out the negative space too. Don't just look at the positive space. And
I'm glad you enjoyed that.
So why don't you tell us a little bit about your background? I know you're a microbiologist, and
so I was. So I'm from France, and as you can hear it probably, and so I did my study. I did my PhD in France, in the east of France, and then I was working on. It was already microbiology, but with more biochemistry into it. And then I moved to the south of France where I was working for 2 years in a microbiology lab, studying photosynthetic bacteria. And then I moved to the US, Indiana University, and during 13 years I was also working on photosynthetic bacteria as a microbiologist. And now I moved to Montreal recently, like about 8 months ago. still a microbiologist, you know. I mean,
Okay.
it's
And
what
so
I-
this is your job. You're
Yeah,
still
yeah,
working.
that's my
okay.
job, yeah.
Okay.
And so now I'm studying how bacteria can glue on, I mean, can like bacterial adhesion on surfaces. Yeah. So
Okay.
that's my new job.
So are you studying the coronavirus?
Not at all. No, just bacteria. No,
Damn,
no,
everybody's
but,
all about that right now.
Yeah,
I know.
Yeah.
It's the new thing.
Yeah.
The coronavirus.
yeah. Well, yeah, it's,
Well, yeah, I mean, it's going to
Yeah.
be something, one thing
Exactly.
or another.
Yeah.
So you work with plants then?
no, just
No,
bacteria.
Just bacteria.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, anything new next or new next?
I'm not sure. We'll
Okay.
see. I mean, I'm not. I can't say for real. So.
Okay.
But yeah.
And is there anything else you want to add about the Wim Hof method, or you
well,
know how it personally?
So I could talk about the Wim Hof method for hours. So you know it depends where you want to go on that. But yeah, I mean the Wim Hof method basically is like the three pillars. So yeah, what we call the three pillars: breathing techniques, gradual exposure to cold, and mindset are the three pillars. So I mean, if you practice only one of the pillars, you're not doing the Wim Hof method.
Okay.
If you practice only two of them, you're not doing the Wim Hof method.
Yeah.
So that's. I mean, I'm not saying you should not. I mean, you do whatever you want basically,
Yeah.
but that's how
One is
it
not
is.
the
It
other.
was like
Yeah.
formalized. You know, it has to come
Yeah.
the three together. So.
Yeah. And the three together then harmonize the full practice,
Yeah.
or bring it all
Yeah.
together, and they accommodate one another, I would imagine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if we, I mean, I don't know. I'm not sure what level of detail, you know, I can go into, especially since I don't have like some diagrams or what to show.
Right, but
So it's harder. But basically, I mean. What I like to say to people to kind of simplify the thing is that with the first two pillars, which are like the breathing and the cold exposure, I mean we play on stress.
yeah,
You know, like when we do the breathing technique, we go into some kind of stress situation that we go there like at our own will. And we play with that, you know, and when we go into the cold, I mean, especially if you take the example of the ice bath, I mean, it is obviously also a stressful condition. So we go, I mean, overall, these are like the two, like formal, I mean, the two first pillars, breathing and cold exposure, they make up like the formal practice that you have to do, I mean, if possible, like every day. And the third pillar is more like the informal practice. So, you know, third pillar is more an abstract, it's more conceptual. We call it the mindset, sometimes we call it the commitment, sometimes we call it the mental preparation. So, but basically, the way I like to see it is when you take the formal practice that you do every day, you learn how to deal with some stress. You learn also to lower your inflammation, to lower acute or chronic stress. But that's something you would do either on your yoga mat or in your shower with cold water or in your tub with ice cold water. But what about when you go into the real world?
Oh man.
So I mean, the third pillar it's really about like translating what you do on your mat to the real world, or what you do on your ice water filled tub to the real world.
Yeah.
So that's where it's becoming very powerful, because it's not actually a hard. I mean, when you practice the two first pillars, I mean, the translation is pretty natural. I would say.
I would say so too.
It's
Or
pretty
at least
natural.
for me, it was a progress and it was a process, and then what you could take from that is a life skill to apply in every direction. And I often say, you know, practicing asana is not the same thing as practicing yoga.
Yeah.
You know, asana is one limb of the process.
Yes.
And so if you want to do that one limb, great. I'm not going to tell you no, but please don't call it yoga. Because yoga is the entire philosophy.
Yeah.
So it's the same with the Wim Hof.
Yeah.
You know, you could do one of those 3 pillars, but then it's not technically Wim Hof. It's one of those 3 pillars, which isn't wrong, but it's not Wim Hof. And those differentiations, I think they need to be stated clearly. And that's what I liked about the method, is that it was a true method. You could see the process happening. You could see that this is going to be beneficial for people. This is going to help people meet life in a different situation and be able to navigate a more difficult situation because they're conditioned to be in a state of equanimity in a committed, stressful situation.
Yeah.
And you know, life is stressful.
Yeah.
We got to figure out how to navigate that.
And life, I mean, without stress, life would be really boring, actually. So, you know,
we'd be dead.
Yes, we would be dead. No, the problem is that, it would be, I mean, stress, I mean, there is good stress and bad stress, basically. I mean, acute stress can be good. Because it triggers like a reaction, you know. But the problem is that when it turns into chronic stress, and then you live in a constant stress, and that, I mean, mental eventually illness. That makes you completely it kind of burns you out.
Yeah, and we're unable to figure it. We're totally destabilized. Agreed.
And from the, I mean, I know it's kind of probably like oversimplified, but if we think about that from like a more neurological standpoint, like the autonomous nervous system, which regulates like very basic function of like homeostasis, you know, like such as body temperature, breathing without thinking about it, you know, or you know, like heartbeat, this kind of stuff. So that's like the autonomous nervous system that is managing that, and it doesn't need any conscious effort. That's why it's called autonomous. And it can be in 2 different states, like the sympathetic or parasympathetic, which are also called fight or flight and rest and digest. And the problem is that it's actually good to be able to switch from one state to the other. I mean, you know, when you have to rest, you know, it's good to be able just to rest. But then if, let's say, you have like a danger is coming, then you need to be able to switch to the fight or flight. Otherwise, you'd be really in danger if you are not able to escape or to counter-fight, you know, like a danger. The problem is that when you spend your whole life instead of switching into both states, you are just staying in the fight or flight, like during your whole life, and that really burns you out. And the problem is that, you know, the human brain has not evolved a lot in the past hundreds of thousands of years, and now we live, you know, in big cities with a lot of there is traffic, we have a lot of alerts, you know, on phones and email alerts and stuff like that. And a lot of those things are interpreted by the brain as potential danger, or like at least you have to be alert, you know. And that tends to make people like, okay, like being like on the fight or flight mode, like more
even when we don't even know that we are, you're like, our balance is gone to know when we're always in amber alert, but it may be red alert, we don't know.
And the thing is that when you spend too much time there, you get burned out, and and then you are just like you can't react anymore to a danger, because you're just,
and everything is the same amount of danger.
I mean, your body is too tired to produce the stress hormone that would help you to go out of a danger, you know, like adrenaline or cortisol. And so when we do the Wim Hof method, so this is something that there is some scientific data about it, but it's not. I'm not pretending the Wim Hof method is 100% scientifically validated, but there are some data available showing that when we do so, either by the breathing exercises or when we do cold exposure, we do synthesize like stress hormones like adrenaline or noradrenaline. So in fact, if you do that practice and then you translate it in the real world, in fact you kind of regain your ability to switch between the two states.
Yeah, those skills.
And that's really. I mean, maybe there are other interesting things about this method, but I think at this point is probably like the most important benefit you can get.
That was what touched me the most about it, is that, I'm going into a stressful situation and I get to observe my reaction to that stressful situation.
Yeah.
And for me, going in that tub, I don't do necessarily, Scandinavian as I am, I don't do necessarily well with cold, ironically. And so I was kind of thinking it was going to be more mental, but it was really physical. My body seized up. I was just, trying hard to get that breath or what have you. And if you hadn't been there, I'm sure the panic level would have gone to the point where I would have been out of that tub.
Yeah.
And
which is a natural reaction, It's not like there is nothing wrong about that.
No, but it's you can make it.
Yeah.
I forget the other guy in the class, and he was like, you're not going to die in that time. I was like, that's a good way to look at it. And then watch somebody have a heart attack. Like, shit. But it was really okay. And then I couldn't breathe. And I don't know, did anybody else have that reaction? It didn't look like anybody else had that same reaction.
Yeah, it really varies from people to people, but I mean, everybody does have that reaction.
Okay.
Everybody.
Okay.
But for some people, it's more. At least it looks more intense than for others.
I really liked the aspect of the psychological healing that can happen there, because we are pushed to our psychological limits on a daily basis, on an hourly basis even, and so to be pushed to a completely different limit really allows us to, again, regain those boundaries for our psychological limits, to travel safely between fight and flight and rest and digest, and be able to take that step back, like break through those imbalanced tensions, if I can say that. And so for me, that's what I found most touching about it, is that I felt like it's a safe place to explore that trauma, like polyvagal when we were speaking, and I mean, in the end, it was very successful. I couldn't stop talking about it. I couldn't stop telling everybody. It's like, okay, I did it. You have to come the 23rd of May because it's awesome, And so.
No, but I mean, you're totally right. Yeah, it's like we use a cold as a tool. So it's something I like to say, apart for Wim Hof himself, who is like the grandmaster, of the method. I mean, one of the instructors that impressed me or had like a very deep impact on my practice was Casper van der Molen. He's also Dutch, and he was very involved in like formalizing the method and teaching it in the whole world. He wrote a really excellent book called Mind Lift. About what the mind can do, and I mean it's really impressive. But and so one day I remember when I was getting my teacher training, Casper was telling us, okay, like the cold is a tool. The cold is not the goal, because you have a lot of people who are not really familiar with the Wim Hof method. They would ask you question like, oh, so now when it's winter you don't wear jackets anymore, or how long can you stay in the ice bath? They ask all sorts of questions like that, and in fact, what I like to answer them is, like cold resistance and how long you stay in the ice bath are more like a side effect of your practice. I mean, the main effect is using the cold as a tool, as you say, like it's a tool to put yourself in control condition into like into a situation that your brain will interpret as a life-threatening situation.
Yeah.
Which is, I mean, it's like an instinctual reaction, you know, like when you jump in that ice cold water. But I mean, overall, I mean, except if you have, maybe, you know, we have to say that, you know, if you have like cardiovascular issues, or, you know, you have to be careful if you have the Raynaud syndrome of type 2, you shouldn't do that. But I mean, other than that, it's pretty safe, you know, to go in the ice for like 90 seconds, 2 minutes. But then, you know, your brain will interpret that, okay, as it is a life-threatening situation. But then you are during like typically during a workshop, you will be trained, you know, like gradually during the whole day to deal with that, and you will be able to deal with this eventually at the end of the day. So then somewhere it's like you put a little flag somewhere in your brain, like, because the brain likes to take some path, you know. You know, like when you learn something, you actually create a path in your brain, like a neural path. And because the brain is kind of a lazy organ, so, you know, when you create a path, usually, you know, you're stuck there. And what makes you, I mean, when you are young, you create a lot of paths, and usually you are lively and energetic.
The more disappointments we have in life, the less paths we create.
Exactly. As we grow old, you know, we repeat the same old path.
That path is enough. In fact, borrowing.
And we learn less and less, and you know, and that's how we became more susceptible, you know, to depression and stuff like that. So that's why people, a lot of in the medical world, they encourage people to combat neurodegenerescence by learning new stuff. You know, like you can learn you can learn a new language, you can learn how to knit, you can learn a new game or whatever. It will stimulate like your brain plasticity and so like, and create new paths. And so I'm getting kind of sideways. But
I get it. The complexity is important for us as humans to navigate.
And if we go back here to what happened during the Wim Hof method, during the ice bath, is that, okay, we face like a very stressful situation, and somewhere in the brain we put like a little flag saying, oh, if I'm in that kind of stressful situation, I can go on that path instead of
this path,
the path of panic. And it's where I could see, I could observe on myself and on other people some side effects of the Wim Hof method practice. Like what I call those side effects is, you know, when you say, oh, I want to learn the Wim Hof method, let's say to treat my depression, or to improve my recovery as an athlete, or I want to, I don't know, to deal with my chronic pain, you know, or you have all sorts of, all sorts of
we come to things
practitioners.
Our own,
But sometimes, you know, you would just practice and you say, oh, okay, my depression is getting better, or, you know, or sometimes it's just, for some people it will be a little bit better, for some people it will be like a lot better, anyway. But let's say a few months later, you are facing a situation of stress, and you just realize that you didn't react as you would expect.
As your old pattern may have been.
And I could feel that one day I was invited for a conference for my work, and I'm more of a shy person, you know. Okay. I'm not so much into like public speaking and stuff like that. And so
we got him here talking
but you know, but then I was invited for that conference, and there were maybe 300 people, so not huge conference, but still, you know,
300 people's
decently
alive. Yeah.
big, and I was I could feel it was not like a normal day, but I was okay.
Mm-hmm.
And my wife was telling me, but you look very calm, you know, and
Look good,
what's
Sebastian,
going on?
what's
Are you-"
happening?
And I told her, well, you know, I don't know, I cannot explain it, but I think that when you go in the ice bath,
Yeah,
I mean, yeah, what can happen, you know?
Yeah. yeah. Everything can change.
Yeah.
You know, everything can change when nothing changes. So when you give it the ability to adapt to a new change, I would
Yeah.
imagine this is so much better.
Yeah.
You know, when nothing changes, it's like, okay, everything's got to collapse.
Mm-hmm.
But here, you're actually building.
Yeah.
And so, sorry, go
Yeah,
ahead.
no. But no, I was just going to add. But the thing that you write some new path, but you know
Mhm.
you have to keep the practice going on, because you know if you never know if you at some point your brain will go back to the old habits
Mhm.
or not.
Yeah. We
You know,
return where it's comfortable.
it's not like the Wim Hof method. It's as I was saying, like it's not a miracle pill. It's not something that okay, you will go in the ice and after that you are like a blank sheet with a new start. I mean,
Yeah.
there is some of that.
Yeah,
Because it's like
yeah.
there is a new you,
Yeah.
but it's something that is written on the old you. So
Yeah.
you know, it's not something that will. Yeah.
You're going to
there
get
is no
from it
magic
what
here.
you give to it.
Exactly.
I agree.
Yeah.
Gita Iyengar, she says yoga isn't the fastest way, but it is the surest. And
Okay,
so,
yeah.
you know, so we just have to trudge along. And today's practice may be extraordinary, and tomorrow's practice may be trudging, you know. And I'm sure that this is it.
Yeah.
So I want to ask you now,
Yes.
you've been practicing for how long?
3 years.
3
About
years.
3 years. Yeah.
So then what is the greatest extreme you've put yourself in with Wim Hof at this point then?
You mean in my practice?
Yeah, and like I know that there's different levels of teaching and you're now going for different levels of certification. So what does that mean for you as a practitioner as well as for, say, me as a layman or a student taking your class?
Yeah, so when you, in fact, you know, when you become a Wim Hof instructor, you are not trying to become Wim Hof.
Right.
So,
No. I can't. Yeah.
No, I know. So it's so during the teacher training, you are pushed to do stuff that are, I mean, that can be demanding, you know. Like you have to, you know, they keep you in the ice for a longer time. They make you practicing like cycles, you know, like ice.
Yes, I
in,
remember you
ice
saying that.
out,
That was what I
ice
was
in,
curious
you know,
about.
this kind
Yeah.
of stuff.
Okay.
But that being said, you know, they would never ask you stuff like staying like 2 hours in the ice. It's not
Well,
like a.
No.
Yeah.
I meant more in like because the first time that I did was
Yeah.
a minute and 30 seconds. Is that right?
Yes.
And 2 minutes
Two-
would be
two-
your
up to
maximum.
2 minutes,
Yeah.
yeah.
And I did a minute and 30 seconds.
Yeah.
So then we're taken out. But I imagine as you've been doing it now for 3 years, you have either built your tolerance for staying or built your tolerance for into an
So-
exit, or how does it grow? How do you?
So I've been trying. I mean, I have trained for kind of both thing. I mean, at some point I did some about 10 minutes ice bath.
Okay.
But you know, to be honest, I haven't practiced that. I mean, that length of ice baths for a while.
Yeah. Okay.
Now I don't think I would be.
Able
I'm
to
not
do
sure
it.
I would be able
Yeah.
to do that. Maybe I would, but I'm not sure. Because as I was telling you earlier, I know if you don't practice, you just lose it. It's very simple.
Absolutely, it goes away.
So but at some point, I was pushing myself to about 10 minutes. I remember when during my about almost maybe second years of practice, I tried to be at home. At home, I told myself, okay, I'm using cold water for a year.
Okay.
I'm not using hot water at all, you know, to wash myself or something like that.
Yeah.
And I mean, I failed after 11 months.
Hey,
You know,
11 months is pretty good, huh?
And, you know,
I'd have gotten like maybe a day.
and I'll be honest, I started to feel kind of a little bit sick.
From the cold water. From who knows?
From a virus around.
Okay.
Because that's another thing. Like cold does not make you sick.
No, of course not. And
Yeah.
drafts don't make you sick. Yeah. I mean, old
Yeah.
wives' tales. Old wives' tales.
Yeah. No, that's It's, so, but yeah, I mean, I started to become a little bit sick. So yeah, I had to back up.
Yeah.
And that's it. And I say okay, but
Yeah.
but to be honest, after that, I didn't want to go back for another 12 months. I say okay, well, I tried.
Yeah.
I failed, but I don't really care. You know,
Yeah.
it was an
You
experience.
failed, you succeeded. You know,
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
like,
it's,
you know,
I mean,
who knows? Who knows?
I was not putting any pressure on me for that. It was
But to
more like,
experience, absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. And I think that's what the challenge is. It's like, okay,
Yeah.
if we continue, how do we continue safely and with respect for the method and the discipline? And okay, be where you are. And this is one thing as teachers, we always have to make sure that the practice is safe for those practicing. And their capabilities may be greater than ours, they may be lesser than ours. So we have to constantly navigate that edge of the knife. And
No, because I mean, it's something I like to insist during workshop is to say that people, when they come to learn the Wim Hof method, they don't learn to become Wim Hof. We are not. I mean, even if you take like an advanced workshop, people they are pushed a little bit more, but they are not. Nobody will encourage them to be like to do like some really crazy stuff.
Yeah.
This is stuff that the people start on their own. You know, it's their responsibility. It's their problem. I mean, I never saw. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, I never saw the Wim Hof method as a competitive process. So that's why I was never really trying to push myself too hard. So I did those kind of experiments, but for me it was more like a kind of a fun way to play with myself, you know. So this like 12 months of cold water would turn to be 11. At some point I could do like a couple of times like a 10-minute ice bath. I did some training on the like the cycling, you know, like the 1 minute in, 1 minute out, you know. And you know,
but I mean, that's what BKS Iyengar says, that asana is the perfect battleground for conflict and creation. And so I kind of see that same thing here. It's, you know, putting yourself there is that perfect battleground to figure out, or that mirror to who we are. And so as much as I would never push myself to try and be BKS Iyengar, nor anyone who studies under me, it would be impossible. But we can use him as our role model to be the best of what we can be. And I imagine that Wim Hof is the same. It's like he created something fantastic and really has gone for it in it. You may never get to his level, but it would be nice to aspire to keep the moral base as your commitment. Or and
no, it's I mean, it's something I liked about Wim Hof. One day he said, well, you know, I'm not, I mean, literally he said, I'm not your fucking guru. My master is nature. And he said, and so I like when he said it, because he said basically the way I interpreted it is like, don't follow me blindly. You know, I'm doing stuff. I mean, I'm Wim Hof, I'm doing some crazy shit, but the Wim Hof method is something that I give you, and then just do it, but follow your own path. And that's it, you know. I mean,
and use your intelligence, develop your intelligence, discern.
You don't want to be. I mean, Wim Hof has its own personality.
Everything does.
And that's good like that, you know. It's,
have you ever met him?
Twice. So when you take the teacher training, so it happens in two stages. First, you do what they call the advanced module. So there is a training in Europe and a training in North America. And since I was living in the US, I took the training in the US. So the advanced module it's a weekend in LA. And so he spent like a half day with us.
So he does the trainings himself, or he has teachers that do the trainings?
He has teachers, you know, but I mean, he's still involved in the teacher training, but
So commendable.
as I don't know, it's getting so popular, you know, that it's harder and harder for him to find the
To
time.
be everywhere.
I don't know all the detail, you know.
Right.
I know that the year before I took my training, he was taking the training in charge almost all by himself. I mean, with some helpers, you know, but he was here the full time.
Yeah.
When I was taking my training, so during the advanced module weekend, I saw him like a half day.
Mm-hmm.
And then when you do what they call the master module, which is like 5 days. So I went to Oregon, Mount Hood.
Mm-hmm.
So
I know it well, yeah.
It's beautiful. Like the North Cascades is one of my favorite part of the US. I took so that's 5 days where you basically train in the mountains. So you jump in mountain stream and you meditate in mountain lakes. And the kind of the grand finale is when you climb the mountain, just wearing shorts and shoes. You start at like 4 a.m.
Wow.
And so Wim was here during 3 days
Okay.
for that thing.
Yeah.
And he climbed the mountain with us. He was basically leading the.
How old is he?
He turned 60.
Oh, okay, so he's young.
Recently.
Okay, so
last
he's young.
year he turned
And
60.
so how long has the
he's
method
turning
been
60,
a thing? Like, how long has it been a method now?
So it started earlier in Europe because I know that in the US, I mean in North America, the first teachers who were trained, it was like 3 years ago.
Oh, okay, so it's
And
relatively
in
new.
In
Okay.
Europe it started maybe, I'm not sure, but that might be a bit earlier, like maybe
Okay.
5 years, 6 years ago. Yeah.
But he spent a lot of time developing before he.
Oh yeah.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to stop us there before we run out of
Yeah.
battery or what have you. But Sebastien is going to be back with his partner Sebastien as well on the 23rd of May.
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah, so if you have any interest, please come. It was amazing. I can tell you that. It was amazing. And I think you'd really appreciate the practice and the teaching. Both so rich. So.
No, yeah, and you know when people ask me, okay, because nowadays there are a lot of resources to learn the Wim Hof method, like on YouTube, and, and which is good. You know, it's great. Even if you go on the official WimHofMethod.com website, you will find some teaching video, which is really good. But I like to tell people that, you know, like, so when you actually take a workshop, it makes a really big difference when you do that with other people.
Oh, it was so
because
beautiful.
you know, you create some kind of tribe building and group energy and some kind of mutual empowerment. And and
there was support. It was really, it was a beautiful experience. It's fun.
It's not something
it was real. It was rich.
It's serious work. It's thank you. I like to bring some really like concrete stuff, you know, so that people can they can go back home with some really like some new knowledge. But at the same time, you know, if we work hard, we learn stuff, and it's kind of challenging, but it's still fun. It's
absolutely, it's a joy to be challenged on that level. Absolutely, absolutely. So again, Sebastien Zappa from the Wim Hof method, and I'll put it in the link. And if you have any questions, you can contact Sebastien or myself, and I'll put you in touch with him. But hopefully we'll see you the 23rd of May, and have a great day.